The wreath was still on the door when I pulled into the driveway. My daughter had hung it herself. I remembered because she'd sent me a photo 2 weeks before Christmas, proud of the silver ribbon she'd tied around the pine cones. I sat in my truck for a moment, looking at that wreath, and I thought about how much things can change in the space of a single evening. I'm 63 years old. I spent 31 years working as a civil engineer for a municipal contractor in Ohio, raised my daughter mostly on my own after her mother passed, and I've never once in my life asked anyone for more than what was fair. My name is Alvin, and what I'm about to tell you is the story of the Christmas dinner that changed everything, for my daughter, for her husband, and for me. It started with a phone call in early December. My daughter, I'll call her my daughter because that's what she is, that's all she's ever been to me, called to say that she and her husband Garrett wanted to host Christmas this year. First time they were doing it at their place. She sounded excited, a little nervous. I told her I'd bring the sweet potato casserole, the same one I'd made every Christmas since she was 7 years old. She paused. Actually, Dad, Garrett's been handling the menu. He's pretty particular about it. Maybe just bring yourself. I said that was fine. I didn't push it. What I didn't say was that the house they were living in, a 4-bedroom colonial in Westerville, belonged to me. I'd bought it in 2019, 2 years before they got married, as a rental property. When they got engaged and started looking for places, I offered to let them rent it from me at below market rate. $800 a month when the going rate in that neighborhood was closer to $1,400. I told Garrett it was my gift to them while they got on their feet. That was 3 years ago. In the last 14 months, I had received exactly 1 rent check. I hadn't said anything yet. Garrett kept telling me the money was coming, a business deal he was working on, a contract that was almost finalized. I'm not a confrontational man by nature. I believed him the first 3 or 4 times. But I'm also not naive, and I'd been watching. I'd been paying attention. I arrived at my own house at 5:15 on Christmas Eve. My daughter opened the door. She was wearing an apron, her hair pulled back, and she looked genuinely happy to see me. The kind of happy that's real, not performed. I hugged her for a long time. She smelled like the cinnamon candles her mother used to burn every December. I almost said something right then. I didn't. The house was decorated beautifully. She'd put up a tree in the front room, wrapped the stair railing with garland, set the dining table with cloth napkins I didn't recognize, her work. I could tell, because Garrett was standing in the kitchen doorway, holding a glass of red wine, watching me take it all in. Alvin, he said. Not Dad, never Dad. Always my name, like he was talking to a contractor who'd showed up to fix the gutters. Garrett, I said. Nice to see you. He nodded, took a sip of wine, and went back into the kitchen. My daughter apologized with her eyes. She'd been doing that since the wedding, apologizing with her eyes for things her husband did with his whole body. I'd learned to read it. There were other guests, her college roommate and her husband, who were perfectly pleasant. A cousin of Garrett's, named something I never caught because he barely introduced anyone, and Garrett's mother, a small woman from Pennsylvania, who spent most of the evening telling people about her kitchen renovation. Dinner was served at 7. I noticed immediately that the table was set for 6. There were 6 chairs, 6 place settings, 6 cloth napkins folded into little triangles. I counted twice because I wanted to be sure I wasn't imagining it. I was not imagining it. I stood at the edge of the dining room. My daughter was in the kitchen. Garrett came out carrying a serving dish and set it on the table without looking at me. Garrett, I said quietly, looks like there might not be enough seats. He looked at the table, then looked at me and said, without a moment of hesitation, without a flicker of discomfort, yeah, we weren't really planning for extra. There's a folding chair in the garage if you want to grab it. The room got very quiet. Not a folding chair at the table, a folding chair in the garage. He said extra like I was someone who had wandered in off the street. Like I was a neighbor who'd shown up uninvited to a party. Like I was not the man who owned the floor he was standing on. I looked at him for a long moment. He picked up his wine glass and sat down. My daughter appeared in the doorway from the kitchen. She'd heard. I could tell by the color in her face. Not embarrassment, not quite. Something closer to resignation. Like this was a thing she had been dreading and had done nothing to prevent. I put my coat back on. I think I'll head home, I said. Merry Christmas. She said, Dad. I said, I love you. Enjoy your dinner. And I walked out the front door of my own house and drove home in the dark. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and thought about a lot of things. I thought about the rent. I thought about the 14 months of silence. I thought about the 3 conversations I'd had with Garrett where he'd looked me in the eye and promised the money was coming. I thought about how he'd said extra, and how he'd handed me that word like it meant nothing. I am 63 years old. I'm not a man who cries easily. But I sat in that kitchen for a long time, and I thought about my daughter as a little girl, how she used to climb into my lap when she had nightmares, how she'd made me a card for Father's Day every year from kindergarten through 8th grade, and kept doing it even in high school because she knew I kept them. I thought about what her mother would have said about all of this. I think she would have said, "You've been patient long enough." By the time the sun came up, I'd made a decision. The next morning, Christmas morning, I called my attorney. His name is Ted, and he's been my attorney for 22 years. I apologized for calling on Christmas. He told me to stop apologizing and tell him what was going on. I laid out the situation. The property, the lease agreement we'd never formally signed because I trusted my own family. The 14 months of missed payments, the amount owed. "You want to send a notice to vacate?" he asked. "I want to do this correctly," I said. "Whatever the right steps are, I want to take them, and I want it documented." "Give me a few days after the holiday," he said. "I'll put together a formal demand letter. 14 months at $800 a month. $11,200, I said. I'd already done the math. "That's a significant debt," he said. "And since there's no signed lease, you may have more options than you think." I thanked him and hung up. Then I made myself breakfast and watched the snow come down in the backyard, and I thought about what I was going to do with what I was about to learn, because it turned out the money was the least of it. Ted had a paralegal who did some preliminary research before drawing up the demand letter. Routine stuff, just to understand the full picture. What came back was not routine. Garrett had been operating a small investment advisory service, not licensed, not registered. He'd been taking money from people, mostly older folks, mostly people who'd been referred to him through word of mouth, a church group, a neighborhood association, and managing it, or claiming to manage it, in accounts that didn't exist the way he described them. At least 7 families in the Columbus area had given him money over the past 2 years. The amounts ranged from $6,000 to $40,000. The total, as best Ted's contact could estimate, was somewhere around $90,000. He had also, in the last several months, taken out a personal loan in my daughter's name without her knowledge. She hadn't known. When I found this out, I sat with it for a long time before I could figure out what to feel. I felt sick, and then I felt something else, something closer to clarity. I called my daughter. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail. I said I loved her, and I said I needed to speak with her, and I said it was important. I kept my voice very calm. I'd learned a long time ago that calm is more powerful than anger. Anger gives people something to push against. Calm gives them nothing. She called me back 2 hours later. She'd been crying. I could hear it. "He told you it was coming," she said. "The rent, I mean." He kept saying, "I know what he said. I told her. I need you to listen to me now." I told her everything Ted had found. The unlicensed advisory service, the families, the loan in her name. I told her slowly, and I let her be quiet when she needed to be quiet. She didn't try to defend him. She didn't make excuses. She just got very still on the other end of the phone, the way people get when something they half knew finally arrives in the open and they can't pretend anymore. "I didn't know about the loan," she said finally. "I know you didn't," I said. "What do I do?" "That's up to you," I said. "But I can help you figure it out if you want that." We met in person 4 days after Christmas. I chose a diner close to my house. Neutral ground, somewhere that wasn't the house I owned or her office or anywhere connected to Garrett. She came alone. She looked like she hadn't slept much. I'd seen that look before, on myself, back when I was trying to hold everything together after her mother died. We sat across from each other, and we talked for almost 3 hours. She'd known something was wrong for a long time, she told me. The pattern of excuses. The way Garrett kept promising things that never materialized. She'd pushed back a few times, and he'd managed to smooth it over, and she'd let herself believe him because she wanted to believe him. That's what people do. That's what love does, sometimes. It makes you choose to see something differently than you know it really is. But the loan in her name changed things. That was her credit. That was her identity. That was something he had done to her, not just around her. I told her she had options. I told her about family law attorneys. I told her that whatever she decided, I would support her, but that I was also going to move forward with the legal process regarding the house, because that had to happen regardless. She nodded. She understood. He's going to be angry, she said. He doesn't own the house, I said. He's a guest who stopped paying rent 14 months ago. Whatever anger he has, it doesn't change that. She looked at her coffee cup for a moment. I'm sorry, Dad, she said. For Christmas. For all of it. You didn't put me in that garage, I told her. That was his decision. You didn't make it. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. I didn't say anything. I just held her hand for a while and let the diner noise fill the space around us. The demand letter went out in early January. It was formal, legally correct, and very clear. It stated the amount owed, $11,200, and gave Garrett 30 days to vacate the property or make full payment of all outstanding rent. It also noted, without elaboration, that additional legal matters were being explored. Garrett did not take it well. He called me twice. I didn't answer. He sent a text that was 3 paragraphs long, full of words like disrespectful and family and blindsided. I found it interesting that a man who had told me to grab a folding chair from his garage on Christmas Eve was now concerned about disrespect. I showed the text to Ted. Don't respond, Ted said. Not a word. Let the process work. I didn't respond. What I did instead was take the documentation Ted's contact had compiled about the unlicensed investment activity and forward it, carefully, through the correct channels, to the Ohio Division of Securities. I didn't do it anonymously. I put my name on it. I wanted to be accountable for what I was doing, the same way I'd always tried to be accountable for everything. Within 2 weeks, Garrett had been contacted by state investigators. My daughter had, by that point, moved out of the house and into a short-term furnished apartment nearby. She'd retained a family attorney. I hadn't asked her to do either of those things. She'd made both decisions on her own. I was proud of her for it in a way I didn't know quite how to say yet. The investigation moved faster than I expected. The 7 families who had given Garrett money came forward with documentation, statements, records, emails he had sent them with account information, and projected returns that were, to put it as plainly as the investigators did, fabricated. He had not invested the money. He had used portions of it to service his lifestyle. The rest had been shuffled around in ways that investigators were still untangling. He'd also, in the process, taken advantage of people who trusted him, precisely because he was connected to people like me. People who assumed that someone's father-in-law had vouched for him, that I had endorsed him. I had not. But I understood what he'd been trading on, and it made the sick feeling come back. The civil suit was filed in March. Garrett was named as the defendant. The plaintiff class included the 7 families, whose combined losses totaled just over $87,000. My daughter's name was on one of the exhibits as a victim of the fraudulent loan. Not a plaintiff, but documented. I attended the first hearing. I sat 3 rows back and watched Garrett walk in with an attorney who looked expensive and unhappy. Garrett had lost some weight. He was wearing a dark suit that fit differently than it used to. He didn't look in my direction. The judge, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses and no patience for procedural delays, set a trial date and was gone in 12 minutes. In the hallway afterward, I ran into one of the plaintiff families, an older man, maybe 70, with a cane and a Bengals hat. He introduced himself as a retired schoolteacher. He'd lost $32,000. You the father-in-law? He asked. I am, I said. He looked at me for a moment. She know what he was doing? No, I said. She didn't. He nodded slowly. All right, he said. That's good to know. We shook hands and went our separate ways. The settlement came 4 months later. Garrett did not go to trial. His attorney negotiated a resolution that included full restitution to the plaintiff families, paid out over time, structured and court-supervised, plus fines and a permanent bar from operating any financial services in the state of Ohio. He was required to perform community service. He was not incarcerated, which was the one outcome that bothered a lot of people, including me, if I'm being honest. But the alternative would have taken years and cost everyone more than they had. Sometimes the right choice is the pragmatic one, even when it doesn't feel like enough. The $11,200 in back rent was addressed separately. My attorney filed a civil claim against Garrett personally, and it was included in the structured repayment order. It would take time to collect all of it. That was fine. I had the documentation. I had the court order. I had time. The house in Westerville I decided to sell. I'd thought about keeping it, but something about it felt wrong to me now. Too much had happened in those rooms. I had a real estate agent listed in June, and it sold in 11 days, above asking price, to a young couple with a baby. The realtor told me they cried when their offer was accepted. I liked knowing that. I liked thinking about that family in that house, starting something new. My daughter's divorce was finalized in October. She'd moved into a small apartment closer to downtown Columbus, near her job at a nonprofit that worked with youth literacy programs, work she'd always cared about but had somehow drifted away from during her years with Garrett. She was good at it. She called me more often now. We'd go to breakfast on Sunday mornings, sometimes just the two of us, sometimes with a friend of hers from work. She didn't talk about Garrett much. When she did, it was matter of fact, not bitter, not broken. More like someone recounting a weather event that had passed. That was a hard season. We got through it. One Sunday in November, she said something I've been thinking about ever since. We were sitting at a corner table in a place near her apartment, sharing a plate of biscuits with honey butter the way we used to when she was little, and I'd take her out after church. She was looking out the window at the street, and she said, without looking at me, "I keep thinking about that night. Christmas Eve. I should have done something." "You didn't put me in that garage," I said. Same thing I'd told her in the diner 11 months earlier. "I know," she said, "but I should have said something. I should have told him that was wrong. I didn't. I thought about that for a moment." "You're saying something now," I told her. She looked at me. Her eyes were full of something I didn't have a word for. Not guilt exactly, and not relief exactly. Something between the two that has its own weight and its own texture. "I missed you," she said. "Even when I was with him, I missed you. Isn't that strange?" "No," I said. "It's not strange at all." We finished our biscuits. She paid, even though I tried to. We walked out into the November cold and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, and she hugged me the way she used to when she was small, the kind of hug that doesn't have any self-consciousness in it, that's just pure. "Same time next week?" she asked. "I'll be there," I said. "I'm not telling you this story because I want you to admire me. I made mistakes in this too. I waited too long, I trusted too easily. I let things go further than they should have because I didn't want to damage something I loved. That's a human failing, and I own it. But I also know this. The moment you start treating someone's patience like a resource to extract, you have misread the situation entirely. You have mistaken endurance for consent. You have confused a man's willingness to wait with a man's willingness to be diminished. And those are not the same thing. They have never been the same thing. I checked my watch on Christmas morning and decided it was time. That's all it was. Just a decision made quietly at a kitchen table while snow came down in the backyard and the coffee was still hot. Some decisions you make with anger. Some you make with grief. The best ones, the ones that hold up, you make with clarity. And then you let the process work. And you love the people who deserve it. And you have breakfast on Sundays and share the biscuits and you don't stop. That's what I did. That's what I'll keep doing.